Hey, today we'll talk about the MySQL cluster, how to recover MCMD. I manage the several clusters using the MCMD, which is the MySQL cluster management daemon, and time to time I have some problems with MCM. It doesn't start or processes are not sync, but I will go over the process which I'm using to identify the problem and address that problem. Now, I have right now the cluster where some processes are failing in the view of the MCM. On one server, I'm running the 4 MySQL processes, MySQL D, and those processes are in status failed. When I'm troubleshooting this, I'm trying to connect to MCM on the server. There is the two servers that we're trying to connect on server 1 and on server 2. And we see that on server 2, we are not able to make connection to MCM, which points, okay, the process is not working. Right, and now let's start it. We're checking the full hard drive. If the hard drive may cause the problem, and then the process could just stop. Okay, the hard drive size is okay here. Now when we start this, the standard process etc init.d MCMD start, it shows success, that there is no indication that something is wrong when you're just starting, but when you're looking for the process list, the process is not there. This is a little bit misleading, the message here. When I'm checking the log file, in the log file I see the message that the data repository MCM data rep folder have permission denied. Okay, then now when I follow up this message, I'm checking that location and validate if the permissions and ownership are allowed for the user who run the MCM and MySQL cluster. And for me, the process which is run by MySQL cluster user. And I see that even in that folder I already have a 777 that everybody can access. Okay, there's no not secure, that's true. But looks like everybody can access this process, and if you're looking for the additional files inside, they're also owned by MySQL cluster. That everything is in order, that MySQL cluster is able to access those. Now with the next step, I'm logging as MySQL cluster user and I'm going to those folders, okay, and I have access to those. Okay, that the problem is it's not really there. Okay. Now on the way to troubleshoot, okay, I just go and I rebuild the repository. I know I have a one MCM which is working, that MCM is providing me the repository. Then I'm just taking the backup of the current repository folder, deleting the rep folder, high watermark, manage log, and rep zone. And now when MCM will finally start, it will rebuild this repository. Of course, we have a problem with start, right? Now, what is my next step? My next step is to try to troubleshoot the startup script and then try executing this as MySQL cluster and see how this is gonna work. Now, to achieve this, in the etc init.d MCMD, I add the line set -x, which displays every line which is executed through that script. And here I was able to capture no-hub command, which is finally executed by MCM cluster user. Okay, now login as that user and execute this manually, it gave me the different error. It gave me that etc MCMD init file have permission denied. Okay, that now you see through those steps I'm coming closer to the real problem. Okay, when I'm checking this file, the file is owned by the root and is only read by the root. And now I'm changing the permission of that file to 44 and setting the ownership and group to MySQL cluster user. This way, the folder, configuration folder, and the configuration file are owned by MySQL cluster user who gonna run the process. And now, when I start that process as MySQL cluster user, I'm getting success, and process start, I'm able to make the connection. Now I'm stopping that process, I'm logging as root, and then restart the MCM again, and now everything is working as expected. MCM starts. Okay, now when MCM starts, the processes from node 2 are showing nicely that they're running, but I have a problem with processes, process 50 and 2. Okay, the 50 is the management node, 2 is data node. Okay, what we can do? If you just rest stop and start the MCMD, not gonna help because it's not refreshing the status of the existing processes. MCMD has the function of the updating the process based on the existing process. That I'm doing the ps-ef grep ndb. I have a list of the all processes running on this server for the cluster, and now I can use update command to update that process status. Before I will update the command, before I will update the status, I want to validate if the processes actually are working. That I'm using the ndb MGM, which is the management process for cluster. This is the native process. The MCM is just the wrapper which manage for us the cluster environment. The ndb MGM is the core of the cluster, which each process has to report to that process. Okay, now here I see that each process is actually working. Every process is in the working condition. They're reporting that I don't have any issues with the cluster itself. That I know my problem is only on MCM level. Okay, that now as I confirm this is MCM level, I'm using the update process --pid number and then process ID and the cluster name. Okay, and here I'm executing two commands which have the process ID, which I need to be updated, and ID 50 and 2. Those numbers are not ID. Once I have this updated, I'm running again a check for process list, and everything right now is running fine. After that, I'm doing the additional validation by stopping and starting some processes using the MCM and validate that I can manage the cluster using the MCMD from each node. Okay, I have two nodes that on each node I'm executing the stop and start the MySQL D, which is running on opposite server. This way I know, okay, that this instance is able to connect and manage the process on this server. This instance is able to connect to this server and update the processes on this server. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you. This was some steps of the troubleshooting which are helping me out to manage MySQL cluster. And MySQL cluster has there is a documentation wrote by Oracle and a couple of commands which I used here, which is the MCMD stop start, change owner to MCMCL, df-kh, ndb mgm, and the most important command which I'm using for troubleshooting is that command which starts MCM as MySQL cluster user. Okay. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.